I stepped through the front door of my own house, the familiar creak of the hinges welcoming me home after a long day. My heart was already heavy from the usual grind, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. My daughter-in-law, Jessica, stood in the living room, arms crossed, her face a mix of anger and something else, maybe fear. "Good, you're here, grab your stuff and leave," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the air. I froze, my keys still dangling in my hand. This was my house, the one I'd lived in for decades, raised my son in, filled with memories of laughter and tears. How could she say that? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Had I missed something? We'd had our differences, sure, but this. It felt like a punch to the gut. I looked at her, searching for an explanation, but her eyes were cold, unyielding. My son, Mark, wasn't even there, just her, standing in my space, telling me to go. I stammered, "Jessica, what's going on? This is my home." She didn't flinch, just pointed to a box by the door, already packed with some of my things. My heart sank. Was this about the arguments we'd had over the years? The little comments about how I raised Mark or how I kept my kitchen? Or was it something deeper, something I'd been blind to? I stood there, rooted to the spot, trying to process the betrayal. My own daughter-in-law, kicking me out of my own house, it was unthinkable. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was stare at that box, my life reduced to a few haphazardly packed items. How had it come to this? I thought of Mark, my sweet boy, and wondered if he knew about this. Did he agree with her? The thought made my chest tighten. I'd always tried to be a good mother-in-law, but maybe I'd failed somewhere along the way. I took a shaky breath, trying to hold back tears, and asked again, "Why, Jessica? Just tell me why." Jessica's face softened for a split second, but then the hardness returned, like a mask snapping back into place. "You know why," she said, her voice quieter now but still edged with venom. "You've been meddling, always in our business, always judging." I blinked, stunned. Meddling. I'd only ever tried to help. When they moved in with me 6 months ago, after Mark lost his job, I thought I was doing them a favor. I opened my home, cooked meals, even babysat their toddler, Lily, when they needed a break. Was that meddling? I thought back to the little moments, offering advice on Lily's tantrums, suggesting ways to save money, maybe commenting on Jessica's late nights out. Had I overstepped? I didn't think so, but her words stung, each one like a needle pricking at my heart. "I was just trying to help," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Help? You call rearranging my kitchen help? Telling Mark he should have married someone else? That's not help, it's control." My breath caught. I'd never said that, not in those words, but I remembered a heated moment when I'd questioned Mark's choices, frustrated by their constant bickering. Had he told her? Twisted my words. I felt a wave of guilt, mixed with anger. This wasn't fair. I'd given them everything, my home, my time, my love, and now I was the villain. I looked at the box again, noticing my favorite teacup peeking out, chipped but precious. It felt like a symbol of how carelessly they were handling me. "Jessica, let's talk about this," I pleaded. "We're family." But she shook her head, turning away. "You've never treated me like family," she said, and those words hit harder than anything else. I thought of all the times I'd tried to connect with her, the awkward dinners, the forced smiles. Maybe I hadn't tried hard enough. Or maybe she'd never wanted me to. My mind spun, torn between defending myself and wondering if she was right. All I knew was that my home, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a battlefield, and I was losing. I stood there, staring at the box, my mind racing through the past 6 months. When Mark and Jessica moved in, I thought it would bring us closer. Mark had always been my rock, the one who'd call me just to chat, who'd laugh at my bad jokes. But since they moved in, things had changed. He was distant, caught between his wife and his mother, always trying to keep the peace. I'd noticed the tension, the way Jessica would bristle when I offered advice or how Mark would change the subject when I brought up the past. Maybe I'd been too pushy, too set in my ways. This was my house, after all, and I'd always run it a certain way. Dishes done right after dinner, laundry folded just so. Was that so wrong? But to Jessica, it must have felt like I was imposing, like I was trying to control her life. I thought of the times she'd snapped at me over small things, like when I reorganized the fridge or suggested she dress Lily warmer. I'd brushed it off as her being stressed, but now I saw it differently. Each moment had been a brick in the wall she'd built between us. Jessica, I said, my voice steadier now, I never meant to make you feel like you didn't belong. She turned, her eyes narrowing. Then why do you act like this house is yours alone? Like we're just guests. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. She wasn't entirely wrong. I'd clung to this house, to its routines, because it was all I had left after my husband passed. Mark was my only child, and this home was our history. Letting go, even a little, felt like losing him too. But I hadn't seen how it made Jessica feel, like an outsider in a place she was trying to call home. I wanted to explain, to tell her about the memories in every corner, the way the creaky floorboard by the stairs reminded me of Mark's childhood. But she wasn't ready to hear it, and maybe I wasn't ready to say it. All I could do was stand there, caught between my love for my son and the growing chasm between me and his wife. The silence between us was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I glanced at the box again, noticing more of my things. Photo albums, a scarf my husband gave me, even my old recipe book. It wasn't just stuff, it was my life, packed up like I was being erased. Jessica, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, where's Mark? Does he know about this? Her face tightened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty. He's at work, she said curtly. And yes, he knows. My heart sank. Mark knew. My boy, who'd always promised to take care of me, was okay with his wife throwing me out. I couldn't believe it. I thought of calling him, demanding answers, but my phone felt heavy in my pocket, like it was anchoring me to this nightmare. Jessica, please, I said, let's wait for Mark. We can sort this out together. She shook her head, her voice rising. There's nothing to sort out. We can't keep living like this, with you hovering over everything we do. Hovering. I'd been trying to give them space, hadn't I? But then I remembered the times I'd walked into their arguments, offering solutions, or when I'd corrected Jessica in front of Lily. Maybe I'd been too involved, too eager to fix things. I thought of my own mother-in-law, how her constant advice had grated on me, and a pang of guilt hit. Had I become her without realizing it? I wanted to apologize, to bridge the gap, but Jessica's anger was a wall I couldn't climb. I'll leave, I said finally, the words tasting bitter. But not because you're right. Because I don't want to fight anymore. Her eyes widened, like she hadn't expected me to give in. I walked to the box, picking up the teacup, its familiar weight grounding me. I wasn't sure where I'd go, maybe a hotel, maybe my sister's, but I knew I couldn't stay here, not like this. As I turned to leave, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Mark. My heart leapt, hoping he'd fix this, hoping he'd choose me. The front door swung open, and Mark stepped inside, his face tired but alarmed when he saw me holding the teacup, Jessica standing rigid nearby. Mom, what's going on? He asked, his eyes darting between us. I opened my mouth, but Jessica spoke first, her voice sharp. I told her to leave, Mark. This isn't working. His jaw dropped, and for a moment, I saw the boy who'd run to me when he scraped his knee, looking to me to make things right. Jess, what are you talking about? He said, his voice rising. This is Mom's house. I felt a flicker of hope, but Jessica didn't back down. It's our home too, Mark. Or it's supposed to be. But she's always in the way, always making me feel like I'm not good enough. I winced, her words cutting deeper than I expected. Mark looked at me, his eyes pleading for an explanation, but I didn't know where to start. I didn't mean to make you feel that way, Jessica, I said, my voice trembling. This is my home. I thought I was helping. Mark ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. Mom, You've been great, letting us stay here. But Jess is right, it's been tense. I didn't know it was this bad. My heart broke. He didn't know. How could he not see the rift growing between us? I thought of all the times I'd bitten my tongue, trying not to interfere, and the times I hadn't, thinking I was being helpful. Mark, I said, do you want me to leave? His silence was worse than any answer. Finally, he said, I don't know, Mom. I just want everyone to be happy. Happy. How could anyone be happy when my world was crumbling? I looked at Jessica, hoping for a sign of compromise, but she just stared back, unyielding. I realized then that this wasn't just about me or her. It was about their marriage, their struggle to find their own way. And somehow, I'd become the obstacle. I clutched the teacup tighter, wondering if I'd ever feel at home again. I set the teacup back in the box, my hands shaking. Okay, I said, my voice barely audible. I'll go, but not because I want to. Because I love you, Mark, and I don't want to make this harder for you. His face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought he'd stop me, pull me into a hug like he used to. But he just stood there, caught between his wife and his mother, unable to choose. Jessica's expression didn't change, but I saw her shoulders relax slightly, like she'd won. I wanted to hate her, to scream that she was tearing our family apart, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Families are messy, full of unspoken hurts and mismatched expectations. I'd thought I was being a good mother, a good grandmother, but maybe I'd been clinging too tightly to the past, to a version of Mark that didn't exist anymore. He was a husband now, a father, and I had to let him be that, even if it meant letting go of my place in his life. I walked to the door, pausing to look around one last time. The living room, with its faded couch and the photos on the mantel, felt like a museum of my life. I'd raised Mark here, watched him grow, mourned my husband here. And now, I was being asked to leave it behind. I'll come back for the rest of my things later, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Jessica nodded, but Mark stepped forward, his voice breaking. Mom, you don't have to go. We can figure this out. But I shook my head. No, Mark, you need to figure things out with Jessica. I'll be okay. I wasn't sure I believed that, but I had to say it, for his sake. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, and I realized I was crying. I didn't know where I'd go or how I'd start over, but I knew I couldn't stay in a place where I wasn't wanted. The door closed behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alone. I drove to my sister's house, the box rattling in the backseat, each bump a reminder of what I'd left behind. My sister, Linda, welcomed me with open arms, no questions asked, but I could see the concern in her eyes as I told her what happened. She said what? Linda exclaimed, pouring me tea. Her nerve, kicking you out of your own house. I nodded, but the anger I'd expected to feel was drowned out by sadness. I kept replaying Jessica's words, her accusations of meddling, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd brought this on myself. Had I been too controlling, too stuck in my ways? Linda listened as I poured out my heart, recounting every argument, every moment of tension. You were just trying to help, she said, but even she admitted I might have come on too strong. You raised Mark to be independent, she said. Maybe Jessica feels like she's competing with you for his love. That hit me hard. I'd never thought of it that way. I'd seen Jessica as the outsider, but maybe she saw me the same way. I sipped my tea, staring out Linda's window at the darkening sky. I missed my house, my routine, the sound of Lily's laughter. But more than that, I missed the family we used to be. I thought of calling Mark, but what would I say? I didn't want to guilt him into choosing sides. Instead, I decided to give them space, to let them figure out their life without me hovering. It hurt, but maybe it was the only way. Linda offered me her guest room, and I accepted, grateful for a place to land. As I unpacked the box, I found a photo of Mark and me at his high school graduation, both of us beaming. I traced his face with my finger, wondering if we'd ever get back to that. For now, I'd focus on rebuilding, on finding a new place to call home, even if it was just within myself. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and decisions. I found a small apartment nearby, nothing fancy, but it was a start. As I signed the lease, I felt a strange mix of fear and freedom. For so long, my identity had been tied to that house, to being Mark's mom, to keeping everything just so. Now, I had to figure out who I was without it. I called Mark, and we talked, really talked, for the first time in months. He apologized, said he hadn't known Jessica was planning to confront me, and admitted they'd been struggling. "We're working on it, Mom," he said. "But I need you to know I love you." Those words were a lifeline, even if they didn't fix everything. He promised to visit soon, with Lily, and I held on to that hope. Jessica didn't apologize, but Mark said she was willing to talk, eventually. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not yet, but I knew I'd have to try, for Mark's sake, for Lily's. Moving into the apartment felt strange, like I was stepping into someone else's life. I arranged my things, the teacup, the photo albums, the scarf, and slowly, it started to feel like mine. I thought about what Linda said, about giving Mark and Jessica space to build their own family. It wasn't easy, letting go of the role I'd played for so long, but maybe it was necessary. I started small, joining a book club, taking walks, finding joy in little things. Each day, the ache lessened, replaced by a quiet strength. I wasn't just Mark's mom or Jessica's mother-in-law, I was me, and I was enough. One evening, as I sat in my new apartment, sipping tea from my chipped teacup, I got a text from Mark, a photo of Lily, smiling, with the words, "She misses Grandma." My heart swelled, and for the first time in days, I smiled. Maybe we'd find our way back to each other, not in the same house, but in a new kind of home, built on understanding and love.